All right, guys, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Results Loading Podcast hosted by Prosperous AI. I'm your host, Michael Atkin, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Anthony Varela, owner CEO of Hot Shot Fabrication. Anthony and I met at a founder's lunch, hit it off right away. And like many other founders, we talked here on the Results Loading Podcast. Noticed Anthony had a great story and wanted to get him here on the pod. So Anthony, welcome. Thanks so much for being on today, man.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So want to dive right in here. Can you talk a little bit about your background and your come up? You've had quite the extensive career already working in oil, military and defense, telecom, engineering. The list kind of goes on, it seems like. Can you speak a little bit to what led to starting your own company in Hot Shot Fabrication? How did we really get here, and how did we get this party started?
Yeah, so I guess where it really started is at a real young age. My parents had divorced when I was really young, and when my mom remarried, she remarried somebody that was a very white collar individual, and my biological father being very blue collar. So I've always had this kind of mechanical aptitude for my biological father, and then kind of learning the ropes and the etiquette of the white collar corporate world, I guess you would say. I learned that from my stepdad. And so growing up, it was very strange to me sometimes because, my biological dad, he was more lenient, laid back. And then my white collar dad, he was just more strict and to the point. So, we'd go in the school year, it'd be very like, hey, this is how it's done. There's no deviation from it, and just get it done. And then, I would go and see my dad for the summers or like, spring break, winter break. And it would just be like, do whatever you want, and let's go build something. Let's go build an engine. Let's go build, this boat. Let's go build this hot rod. Let's go work on this motorcycle. So it was always something really fun to do. And not to say my white collar dad wasn't fun at all. He had a different way of coming about things. He came from a family of 10, so their dad had to definitely keep order when you're trying to command around 10 kids, So, but for my biological dad, I'm his only sibling that we know. There could be like 6 more kids out there once he passes away that I find on Ancestry or something. So, but we'll see what happens. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But if we fast forward a little bit, I was always very mechanically inclined because of my dad. Both of them very hard-working individuals, very honorable men. Your handshake, that's a deal, and that's how it will be done. And they both would agree to something like that. So there was definitely common grounds there. Moving forward a little bit, though, once I got to like high school and stuff like that, both of my dads kind of acknowledged that, hey, you're more geared towards something mechanical wise or designing. So why don't you pick a skill? Still maybe, go to college and everything and go for engineering if that's something that you'd like to do. But during high school, I went to school for automotive. And then I think my senior year, I went for machinist or something like that. And then when I graduated, I went to college for engineering, and I liked it, but I didn't finish it. And one of the reasons I didn't finish the career in engineering was because of my professor. And looking back now, I'm like, gosh, what a weak individual to let somebody's words sway you. But at the same token, I'm like, man, if his words hadn't swayed me, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I was working on some drawings for my engineering class in college, and I was always kind of ahead of the class. And, he would just give me these projects that were just like, hey, here, just do this for an hour and we'll come back to you or whatever. And one day I asked him, I said, man, we built a lot of cool things in here, but when do we actually get to like physically build it? And his words to me were, you will never get to physically build one of these things. You will be in a firm, drafting or working on a computer on CAD or something like that. if you choose to for the rest of your life. And I went home that night and I thought about those words, and it killed me, man. Something inside me died. And the next day I dropped out of college because of it. And so my parents, obviously, they were pretty pissed about it, and that I would drop out of high school because what some guy would, or drop out of college because what some guy would say. And they said, well, what's your fallback? And both my dads were like, well, why don't you do what you wanted to do from the beginning, get a skilled trade? So then I started to go to school for welding, and I finished that program. I accelerated through that program and finished early on that. And sure enough, my first job right out of graduation was building custom motorcycles. And so I worked for this company where this was in Houston, Texas. I worked for this company. We built custom motorcycles, and we started off building these motorcycles for like $30,000. And by the time I got done with that career, we were building bikes for Discovery Channel. We were selling bikes to like celebrities, rappers. It was just so cool, And I visited my stepdad and my mom up here in Colorado, and I was like, man, Colorado's pretty. Maybe it's time for a new pace of life. And so I moved up here, and I've been up here since I think like 2011. I want to say, yeah, probably about 2011. And when I got here, I got back into the tower climbing deal. Working with telecommunication companies. Again, I did a little bit of consulting here, which I was fine with. But out of all my jobs, I only stayed there for maybe 2 to 3 years max, and I was just so bored with them. And I think what drove me to the ground the most was a lot of the corporate mentality of how to like run a business. And some people feel like businesses just, they look at you like a number, and I really felt like that. And then to see how they deal with clients, like when they get really big, they don't care who you are as a client. It's like, whatever, if you don't like what we do, then pound sand and go to Joe Schmo next door. And I was like, man, that's just like missed opportunity and money just going out the door. And like, these guys are actually good people if you just give them the time and actually hear them out. So I think that was one of my moments where I was like, what if I did the opposite of what a lot of these corporate companies did? And what if I just listened to my customers, heard them out, and actually delivered a product on time and for a reasonable price, And so that's when I started working part-time as a fabricator up here. And I started off in my dad's horse barn, nothing but like dirt floor, dust everywhere. And I just put down like a 4x4 sheet of metal, and I just had one little crappy welder, and I started off with that. And then like within a couple months of doing some side jobs, I got like a better welder. And then another couple months later, I got an actual welding table. And then fast forward like a year, that barn was no longer a dirt floor barn. It was just concrete floors, custom gantries that I had made. It was all decked out, and it was a really cool place. But it was only like 1,200, maybe 1,500 square feet max. And so I think it was about 2019. I was like, I was telling my stepdad, I was like, I'm so worn out. I get home from work, and then I go into the barn and I start working here, and I'm working here till like 1 a.m. And he's like, well, why don't you just do it full time? And I was like, I don't know if I could support myself on that. And he's like, I'm pretty sure you could. And he's really good with finances. He's always been in finances. So he kind of always like looked at my finances and was like, yeah, you could do it. And he said, what's the worst if it doesn't work out? You just go back to work. So I took the big leap, and I think that's always the scariest thing for any business owner to do, is take that leap. And I know none of us ever look back, I feel like, for the most part, nor do we think we could go back to working a 9 to 5, Um, but once I took that leap, I kept the same values that I started with, make something on time, make something for a decent price, do it quickly, have good conversation with your client. And I just kept rinsing and repeating that. And my name just kept getting out more and more and more. And then I ran into one of my clients, and I won't use his name, but little did I know he was a serial entrepreneur and very, very successful. Still, plays with investments and other businesses and stuff like that. Sharp as a tack. Just, I call him the train because anything that gets in his way, he just plows through it. Like there is nothing that stops this guy. And so he was one of my clients. And again, he never said anything to me. And I'll never forget. He brought me these, he loves John Deere's. And he brought me this John Deere attachment for his tractor. And he goes, "Hey, I drew this up. Can you make this for me?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So this is the first job I do with him. I make it to his specifications, ask him the questions I need to ask, and then I build it, and then I get it back to him, and I do it in a very timely fashion, and he's very happy with it. He gives me another job, and I do the exact same thing, and he's very happy with it, and then he gives me a third one. And so after this third one, I feel like he was testing me the whole time. Like, again, it's like undercover boss, you don't know who that person is, but like, just again, super knowledgeable individual. And after that third job, he was still happy. And he goes, "Can I give you some advice?" And he started just giving me little pieces of advice here and there. And I would take them and I would run with them, because the one thing that I learned from, my dad and my stepdad is like, turn your mouth off and use your ears. There's always something to be learned. And, if somebody that's a lot older than you is trying to tell you something, listen to it, because it could slingshot you ahead of everybody else. And it always did in my careers, and that's why I moved so fast in every career that I had. I just felt like every career I had was capped out, and that's kind of why I moved on. But yeah, he would just give me pointers here and there, and then all of a sudden it would talk to more like into conversations that we would have, and he would come over and just kind of give me more pointers, conversations, and kind of steer me away from the negative and steer me into the positive, and just kind of he calls it, steering the ship, just keeping your eyes on the horizon and keep going that way and don't veer off course. And I would just keep doing it. And eventually I was able to hire my first employee. And I think that was scarier than actually taking the leap, because now I had to make sure this guy had a paycheck.
You're responsible for someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, shit, how am I going to do that? I'm like, I know I'm making ends meet right now, but man, how am I going to pay for both of us? Like, we would have to do twice as much work. And again, it's like one of those things you're thinking in the back of your mind, and you're like, it just doesn't make sense to me. How would we be able to do that? Why does he just go off? But again, it brought him on. He did awesome work. He's still with me today and stuff like that. And it was like, so we got that first employee, the first year. And then the second year, we brought on a second employee. And then the third year, we moved into a new facility. So we went from
no longer in the barn then.
No longer in the barn. And now we moved into like a 10,000 square foot facility. And I looked at the facility and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to fill this thing? Like, it's massive. And within, God, it had to be only 6 months. I had half of that thing already filled up, hired more people, bought more machines. And then fast forward another 6 months, one of my clients, as my client base grew, was in defense. And they had gotten acquired by a company, and that a company, I guess, had kind of like let go of everybody for the most part. And they were just shutting down all the different departments. And I said, hey, what are you guys going to do with your machining department? Can can I possibly give you an offer? And they're like, yeah. And it was a full-blown machine shop. And so I ended up giving them the offer. It was the first offer they had, and they took it. And
wow, so an acquisition in like year 2 then.
an acquisition about year 3. I'll say
year 3.
And yeah, that was my first acquisition. I still don't really think about it right now. It's just like one of those things like, I need that tool. Let's just get it over here, you know?
Yeah, but the the ROI you went through as like the CEO and owner of the company, it's like, will this purchase exponentially help my company financially? It seems like the answer was definitely yes, right?
Absolutely, and it has. It's been a gold mine for us, and it was one of those things where it opened up so many more doors, like aerospace, more defense contractors.
Because you guys do everything now, right? There's not really a limit in terms of what Hot Shot can work on, whether it be vehicles, facilities, I mean, Air Force, defense, you name your industry, right? Whatever it is, you guys can kind of take care of whatever needs to be done, is my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the things that I always looked at with other companies. And I kind of, as I started to grow, I was like, all right, where did this company screw up? And where do I not make that mistake? And like, I'd see manufacturing companies all the time, and you still see them today. They're on auctions, being auctioned off. Either they're getting acquired or they're going out of business. And the thing is a lot of the times they have all these clients, and we're still a job shop right now, but mostly everybody starts as a job shop, and then they start to weed down their clients, and they get to like 1 or 2 clients. But those 1 or 2 clients are giving them so much work. But when that well dries up with those clients, and they have all this specialized equipment just for those clients, they're screwed. And you see it all.
You want to keep it universal, right? I mean, from someone who knows nothing about the industry, I mean, you're saying that you want to make sure that you're able to have that universal umbrella so you can apply your resources and skills to anything, right? I mean, how many times have you seen companies that are similar to yours get stuck in that run rate business? Then the well dries up, like you said, they're left with nothing, right? I mean, that's a possibility and an unfortunate element of the business you work in, I would imagine.
Absolutely, and that happens all the time. And again, it's one of those things that I deviate from a lot. Is just like, we have 50 different clients like right now and growing. And the thing is it can be hard to logistically, figure out which parts go into what customer, this and that, but we make it work. But what we do a little bit differently, and I think there are definitely some companies that are way bigger than us that do this as well, but we invest into equipment that is intelligent equipment, that we know that we can use for multiple clients. We know we can use it for multiple jobs, but the newer generation can use it as well. Because I see so many shops where they try to take over old equipment and not make the investment. And then, a guy that's like 50, 60 years old knows how to work that equipment, but the 20-year-old guy's like, what do I do with this?
Kids have no idea.
So what do? So you improvise and get smarter machines that actually have like touch face interfaces and stuff like that. And where the programs, you can actually take something from a CAD model, import it into the machine, and actually see it in 3D, move it around, and you can even press different buttons to see as that thing's being processed. Oh, is there a problem here? Okay, there's a problem here. So how do we alleviate that problem before we even put the actual product on the table or in the press brake, anything like that?
Right, because I imagine the industry has advanced exponentially on the technology side, right? Because 20 years ago, you didn't have 3D images and visuals as to what you were about to go and weld or fabricate. I mean, they obviously were, pen to paper was more or less, I'm assuming, the best way for accuracy. But now you throw it on the computer. I mean, I don't know if you guys are even having the 3D printing conversation or utilizing that as well for your business, but a similar aspect in terms of having the diagram and the 3D imaging and everything on the computer first to maximize your chances of an accurate outcome, I would imagine.
And actually, the other thing that we do too is like maybe every month or two, we'll go to a machine shop or a fabrication or manufacturing facility that's much more advanced than us, and just take the tour. And these owners know who we are, but they don't look at us like competitors. Like I don't look at people like competitors. I look at it as like a whole network. Because there's an abundance of work, and you really don't have to fight for it. It's more like, who is the job best for? Let them handle it. You stick to your lane and do your thing.
Is that kind of an industry thing that there's not really that element of competitiveness, more or less? Is that a welding fabrication thing, or is that just kind of like is it a Colorado thing? I mean, I don't think I've heard that yet.
I think it's when you deal with certain owners. No owners are all alike. I mean, I've heard that there's three different personalities. You have like one that's like the chess player, one that's like a narcissist, and I don't know, one that's like like egotistical or something like that. And I feel like I've seen a lot of those personalities. And I think a lot of the guys that are more advanced are more of the chess players. They're looking at like the farther picture. What people see them doing currently is what they are currently doing, but where they're actually heading is somewhere totally different that people don't see. Just like us as well. When I started getting bigger, I said, okay, we have tons of clients. That's awesome. We do mostly civilian work. That's cool. But what about like defense and government? Like, why are we not branching off into that? So we started branching off into that, and then it's been great for us.
How did the business? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, so we branched into that, and then I brought on a third leg, which was education. So we started bringing on interns, and last year we sponsored a robotics team for a local high school, which was really cool because I always liked robotics growing up, but they never had a robotics class for us, so I never got to really see it. So we did some mentoring at this local high school here, and then they ended up doing so well that they made it down to the finals down in Houston, Texas. So I flew down there to go see them compete and everything like that. So that was really neat. So yeah, so there's just those three main legs really for us: is education, civilian, and government work.
Fantastic, man. I mean, really like a true entrepreneurial story. You started out like everyone else. You saw a gap in the market by through application, right? And I don't think that's unique, but I think that's very important for founders and entrepreneurs alike. They're working in the industry, they're working in corporate, and it's like, man, I can treat customers better than this. I'm the one doing all the work. I know I have the skill, I know I have the talent. Why don't I take a whack at doing it myself? But then you run into the main problem that you mentioned a couple of times, is taking that leap of faith. And that leap of faith is, as all of us can relate to, is one of the scariest steps that I think most of us have taken in our lives, up there with, getting married, having kids, what have you. I mean, it's a big deal, putting your livelihood out on the line like that, and taking a risk on yourself and betting on yourself, which is great, but obviously scary, and requires a lot of thought and whatnot. So I'm glad you did, man. I'm glad that things been going well for you, and that we're still having this conversation 10 years later, and Hot Shot's up and running, and have been quite prosperous in the meantime. So with that being said, I know you've been fabricating since you were young, and now as the owner of a business that's lasted for several years now. How are you balancing your role as a fabricator, one of your loves, welding, what have you, and an entrepreneur, business owner, especially when facing both technical and business challenges simultaneously?
Man, so yeah, there's actually a couple more balances to that. So there was the fabricator standpoint, there's the owner standpoint, and then there's your own personal life there. And the personal life and work balance are the ones that I've struggled with the most. I'm very lucky to have a very loving and understanding fiance that just has been with me since kind of the beginning of it, so she knows how I am. She admires it that that I work hard, and she knows it's for myself and for both of us. Um, but it's never really taken a toll on our personal relationship. it's taken a toll more on my physical and mental well-being, I would say, more than anything, as I started to grow and stuff like that, because you can't grow without having growing pains, right? And I think one of the most interesting things is everything is perspective, right? When I first started, like, a job that maybe I screwed up or something that cost me like $500 to fix, I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to make this business work? Like, this is going to put me out of business. And it's like, now it's like, oh man, that guy just broke a $500 end mill in the machine. Go get another one.
Yeah, just another
Like,
day at the office at that point. It's just
yeah,
just
yeah.
another Tuesday.
Yeah, like we just had one of our laser heads go down, and it was like $4,000 to get it over here and overnight. And I was like, just do it here. Boom.
Just do it. We got no
Yeah.
choice.
And that was one thing that the my mentor, he taught me, and this is his famous saying, is just says, write the check. And he's right. Instead of getting holed up on like the small minute things that are holding up everything, just keep moving forward with something. Keep that flow going. And so I would say work-life balance has always been the toughest. For me, not being a fabricator, um, that was probably one of the hardest things for me to step away from, because you go from having a great skill and then you have to start taking this leadership role. And it's just like anybody else, you start to lose your skill a little bit. Yet, I can still go back there, I can run a great feed, that's fine. But like, to be really proficient like I used to be, it would take me a couple weeks definitely to get back to it.
It's got to be every day. I mean,
Yeah.
the same can be said about all skills. I mean, I remember when I was living in Spain, my Spanish was top notch. I
Right.
came back to the United States, and after a few weeks, it's like, oh, what did you say? Like, I don't remember how to say this word.
Right.
It's a trade that requires honing every day, more or less. I'm sure it's like riding a bike to an extent, but in terms of the precision and skill that's required, to your point, I mean, you really need to be out there every day doing your thing, which is hard to do when you have a million other things you got to do, given you're in running the show over there.
Right. I think that's kind of some of the things that are really interesting, is like when you're forced to do something, like you go to Spain and not a lot of people are going to speak English to you, nor do they want to. It's like you're forced to go back to your roots of knowing what the basics, and then it just starts to build up from there. It's like same thing when we go to Colombia. Is my Spanish would be super rusty up here, but then I go down there and it starts to kick back in.
Right.
Um,
It's like riding a bike. It's in there
right.
somewhere, but you just need a little warming up, even if that warm up takes a couple days or weeks or what have you.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't know. I think it's kind of fun. I like just being challenged sometimes. Like when these guys say something like, "Oh man, kind of losing your skill." That's when I'm like, "All right, let me grab my welding helmet real quick and let me go out there." So I always got it under my desk ready to go. So
Yeah, I would imagine if you're running the show, man, you have no choice just in case. You got to get back there. At least you know what you're doing at the very least.
and I think that was one of the greatest skills that I could ever have, is having a skill in case everything dropped off tomorrow, everybody dropped off tomorrow, I could still start it up again. Um,
Yeah. Well, and that skill is what got you here in the first place. I
right.
mean, and think about like the motions you had to go through. You dabbled in oil, you dabbled in military and defense, you dabbled in telecom, a little engineering. You dropped out of engineering school, and I know it's really cliche, but it's like everything happens for a reason. All of those decisions you made led you to the path that resulted with the situation with Hot Shot Fabrication. And seems like his best case scenario, given where you started and where you're at currently.
Mhm. One of the interesting facts that I learned too, going through business, is how many industries are businesses that we don't think about. And a great example would be the education system. People go, some people, you do have to go to college to get certain degrees and stuff like that. Obviously for skilled trades, you usually can go to a trade school and get a certificate or certification of some kind. But if you're forced to go through like a college or something like that, and even a trade school, you got to pay a certain amount of money to get that piece of paper, right? That says, hey, I'm legit. But at the same token is, what kind of margin comes with that? Like, how much does the school actually make off that? How much do the financing companies actually make off you? You know, because really most people finance their education because it's so expensive. So really you just give them back to the bank, which is all it is a loan, you know, that's getting interest and principal. So
It's all just a business, and certainly much more expensive to get professional education than say when our parents were our age, for example.
right.
You know, a lot has changed in the education industry. I used to actually sell to the education industry, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there's no shortage of cash or funding in the education industry in the U.S. For certain, especially in the at the college level as well as the K-12 public school systems. They've got, most of the time, depending on where you are,
Yeah.
a lot of money to dabble around with. So it's interesting that you've decided to attack that industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about why education specifically, when you narrowed it down to three: civilian education and the third one being defense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So education so tell us a little bit, because I'm curious about the education element, just given I have a background in education. The sales cycles are long. They need approval to spend every cent. Why did you guys think that was the best industry to attack for your business?
So I remember interning for places, and when I interned for places, it was like, okay, I'm the one interning here. Yeah, it looks cool. Maybe I'd love to work here, but really, the managers were looking at us saying, "Hey, this guy does good work. Maybe we should hire him." You know, so that's one of the greatest ways I think to find out, how to build that culture in your business is, have that like probational period of having somebody come in, work with you. How do they work with everybody else? Are they hard workers? Are they learners? Are they ambitious? You get to see all these things that you wouldn't necessarily get to see with just an interview. An interview is usually what, 15, maybe 30 minutes long. How are you going to be able to see the things that you like and you don't like in 15 to 30 minutes? Like people are going to they're going to put on a little bit of a show, just because they want something. They want a job, if
They
they're
want to
there,
impress, right?
they want to impress. Exactly. So I thought it would be great to bring these guys in. One is to get to know who they are. Do I want to bring these kids in, after they get done with college? And actually, we've had some interns that are in college as well. Do you guys want a job here after you get done? And one of the greatest things is, with education, I just get to help the younger generation see that you can make a living out of a skilled job. Like there is money to be made having a skilled job. It's just in about 5 or 10 years, that's when it's really going to kick in, and people are going to be like, well, how is that made? Or who's going to change the oil in my car? Or, like who's going to build my house? Why wouldn't we, want to show all of these kids like what we currently do? Like, just like maybe your dad or my dad showed me, like, hey, this is how you build a fence, or hey, this is how you change the oil in your car. Like, hey, this is how you change your tire. Like most people don't even know the basics anymore of how
Yeah.
to get by with stuff. So I think it's really important. And we're almost responsible for making sure that we do keep people in our industry, and we show them that it is a good industry. It is okay to work hard, blue collar, white collar. It doesn't matter. Both people can work very hard in an industry.
Well, and you're a walking example of it. You came up, you climbed the ladder, and you went through the process as well. And now you own your own company, and you're educating and employing and showing people what can be done if you work hard and have a little bit of grit and determination, and what can be done in your specific field, right? I mean, you're a
Right.
walking example of that, almost like a perfect mentor, if you will. Personally, coming from the corporate world myself and starting off as an intern and going into full time and then moving up to Denver for another job,
Mhm.
it is all about who you work with. Because yeah, sometimes, I mean, what job, if you love your job, that's great. And it's an attitude thing, it's approach thing, that's its own thing over here on its own island. If you work with a bunch of like-minded people who you really love, who you would consider your work family, like what you just described, it makes things 99 times better, and the workday goes by much faster because you enjoy you enjoy who you're working with. It makes a gigantic difference.
We actually we had one of the guys, I forget what he said. He came in one of the weekends, and that's the other thing too, is I give these guys unlimited overtime, and so they can really choose, hey, I'm hurting this week, I work overtime, boom, I can make up for those extra expenses. Corporate world really doesn't allow you to do that. And the other thing too is, like, I think what turned me off the most with corporate world is when I want to take time off when I'm burnt out, like, why should I ask somebody for permission?
Yeah, it's 2024. This is America, man. We should be able to do what we want to, to an extent. Like you said, if we're in the middle of like an RFP or a huge product, I'm not going to take like a 3-week trip to Japan.
Mhm.
But if I need to be gone Thursday to Sunday for like my, fiance's sister's wedding, for example, or something like that, like I need to go to it. It's just human. People are human. You got to go and take care of business personally, go and do it. And we'll see you when you get back. Like, we're not saving lives out here.
So you just hit the nail on the head. And that's how I run the business right there, is treat people like people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the right way, because then your employees respect you more, and your employees will never leave you because you set the tone with that culture. They probably adore you. One of my best managers actually said, he's like, I'll never micromanage you. I'll never check in on you. Just don't let me hear about you. And he was one of those guys who never got upset. He never got mad. He never said no when you had to be out of office or go out of town or something like that. And our team adored him, respected the hell out of him. And if he ever did get mad, you knew that it was a really big deal, because there was that mutual respect, and employees respond really positively to that. And that's the right way to run a team. And obviously for you, the right way to run a company. Look at the responses you've got from your team. I mean, sounds like you got an amazing setup over there.
Yeah, I mean, like, even there'll be times where I come in on a Saturday, Sunday, and there's always somebody here. It's like somebody's working, and it's like they're working. It's not like they're just working on whatever their own personal projects. They're actually working, and it's weird because we all like will come in here and we're like, oh shit, I didn't know you were gonna be here this weekend. Like, nobody plans it. But at the same token, I tell these guys all the time, like, just go home. I'm like, go enjoy your weekend, go home while you still can, because, like, for me and for any other business owner, usually when you get to a certain point, there is no on-off switch anymore. It's always on, and you always got to be there to, answer to somebody or something, or fix something when it's an emergency. There's always something going on. And so that's why I tell them enjoy it, because you don't know the amount of stress you have as a business owner until you really get into it knee deep, when I was just in the barn, that was me just dipping my toes. I thought I was knee deep in that, but that was just me dipping my toes. And I say I'm knee deep now, but maybe 5 years down the road, I'll still say where I am right now, I was just dipping my toes.
It was nothing compared to where you'll be in 5 years, for example. Nothing.
So it's like it's all perspective again. It's the now in the moment perspective. But I think the work balance is really important for everybody, and that they need that. I think that's the most important thing is don't be like boss, have your own work-life balance, enjoy life,
But Anthony, to wrap up here, one last question I wanted to ask you. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of one of your early aha moments, but mainly pertaining to Hot Shot Fabrication. Can you share with us one of those aha moments with the business, moments where you physically felt like things were starting to change for your company for the better? I know you mentioned your first employee, maybe your second employee when you moved into the 10,000 square foot facility. I'm not sure. And those, any of those could be this moment. But can you think of a specific situation or idea that at the end of the day, you really felt the tides turning from scratching, clawing to falling more into you guys are headed in a positive direction, and that this is going to be sustainable for the, intermediate future, if not longer?
Yeah, and honestly, one of those aha moments actually came from that mentor that I was speaking about. He, for the longest time, I never, and this kind of goes back to the beginning, I never knew why he asked asked me questions, like why did he want to help me, to grow and stuff like that. Because, after a while, after like doing a couple jobs for him, I looked him up and I saw who he was and what he did and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, why would this guy want to talk with me? Um, so getting into that aha moment, it was like maybe 6 to 8 months ago. I was having lunch with him and my attorney. And my attorney, and I would always ask him, I was like, hey, what did you see in me? Like, why did you choose me to like actually like give me advice, give me your time and see me grow? And he never answered. He kind of like brushed it off. And my attorney asked him. So now it was a direct question from another individual other than myself. So he had to answer it, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm just like chomping at the bit. And I want to see what he says. And
Yeah.
this was my aha moment. He goes, Anthony had the recipe for success. And my attorney goes, okay, can you elaborate on that? He goes, he listened to what I had to say. He listened to my instruction. He built what I needed. He built it on time. And when I came by, he was very cordial with me. And he actually talked with me. And I'm thinking like that that's it. That's all it takes
Yeah,
to be
that's it. It doesn't seem very
successful.
hard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is the recipe. Like there's
Sounds
no,
like a recipe for success to me.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, but it's no secret. It's just like basic knowledge. And I think anybody in any industry can succeed when they look at it like that. And like you said, treating people like people, just listening to them, whether they're your employee, whether they're your clients, it doesn't matter. Just listen to what they have to say. It's something you can do. Make sure you can do it on time, make sure you can deliver to them, and make sure it's something that you can do with quality and stuff like that. And that was one of my biggest aha moments. But what do you just out of curiosity, what's like your definition of success? And it's a personal question.
It's a great question, first and foremost. The definition of success for me is, and I own a small business as well. I own a startup here too. Going to bed feeling like I accomplished something and having more small wins than losses during the day. And we take a lot of losses, right? Being a startup, it's hard. It's hard. You have to weather the hurricane each day, and we fail a lot. And we try really, really hard not to fail 2 times in a row because we like to learn from our failures, but we like to have more of those small wins and those small failures, because what we've learned is those small wins start to add up, and then you get into a couple medium-sized wins, and those medium-sized wins add up to be a few big wins. The next thing you know, a couple years have gone by and you're self-sustaining and your employees are happy and things are going your way. And so from a business perspective, I think if everyone goes to bed happy, feeling like that they're contributing to something, accomplish something, it's like, when you're really stressed, and the best way to alleviate that stress is to get something done and to accomplish something.
Yep.
For me, I think that's a really successful day. But
That makes sense, man.
since we're on the subject, what do you define as success, since you're asking?
The word success, I feel like, is always about more where do you want to be. And I would say like at the beginning, success to me was all about just making money, like being like having financial freedom, and just being able to go and do whatever I want. To me now, success is more just if I can spend enough time with my family, my friends, and we still have a little bit of financial freedom, I'm happy. And my ultimate goal of, success is just to be happy in whatever I do. Um,
Yeah, man. So, Anthony, well, I really appreciate having you on. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. Your insights have been, really, really useful and productive. And I really appreciate you joining us today on the Results Loading podcast. Before we wrap up, do you have anything else you want to mention before we log off here?
I just want to thank you, man. Honestly, I think it's not my first podcast, but I always feel really honored anytime somebody asks me to do it because, you know, that person finds you interesting. They want to hear more about your story. And that's one of my things that I love to do is I love to go places and ask people about their own story, because everybody's got a story, whether they think they do or not. You go to the airport and you're sitting there at the bar or something, you could turn to the guy or girl next to you and ask them about their life. And it's not the same as if you were to turn to the person, to your right. So it's like,
likewise, man. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And again, really appreciate you coming on. I thought your story was fantastic when we met for lunch a few weeks ago. Wanted to dive deeper, and I'm glad I got kind of the full story here from you. And I wish you the best of luck and congratulations on your success so far. And yeah, man, in 5 years, maybe what you're doing now is just ankle level and it'll seem like nothing. So rooting for you and your team. Congratulations again, and wishing you the best of luck moving forward.
hey, I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Take care. And Anthony, I'll look forward to seeing you soon.